When they put this deal together, they said it's going to be a panel of people, but that's wrong. This is a regular reunion. Man, I've been here for 2 hours, and all I've heard is people say, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you forever," and "How you doing?" and all that. So that's great. Welcome to all of you here. And this is the Sesquicentennial Ghost Town panel. These people have a story. We all have a story, and they're important. And these people have worked hard to kind of tell us something about our Chase County history and the towns in it. And so that's why we've asked you guys to be here. Okay, we're going to start with Bernice. Bernice is second from the end. And Bernice, can I tell them what you said to me when you found out this is going to be filmed?
Yeah, I don't care what you say. You would say it anyway.
Bernice said, "Are they going to take pictures?" And I said, "Yeah, they're going to do more than that. They're going to film it." And she goes, "My God, whose fault is that?" Okay, Bernice, tell us a little bit about what you remember about Clements.
Oh, boy. Well, as old as I am, I should remember a lot more than I do. But I guess my first thoughts that I can remember was when I started school when I was 6 years old. And that was at Clements grade school. And I even remember my teacher's name. It was Miss Sanford. But when I think about it, I think about, doggone, what did we do for entertainment when I see what these kids do today for entertainment? And our entertainment was mainly neighbors visiting. They had kids. My folks had 4 of us. And we was fortunate. We lived on Silver Creek, and the kids roamed the hills and the creeks. That's what we did. We had no pools, no electricity, no bicycles. We learned to swim in the creek. Our houses were lit with coal oil lamps. That's what we did our homework by. My dad and neighbors got together and butchered a hog for meat in the fall and then salted it down in the coldest place in the house. But Clements itself is still known for its bridge, the one that the Stone Arch Bridge. Everybody knows where the Stone Arch Bridge is. But we had in Clements, we had a Presbyterian church, we had a bank, we had a post office, and we had a hotel. And actually, there was even a park hotel. Also, we had a gas station and a repair shop owned by Glenn Frisbee, if anybody remembers the Frisbees. So, that was really what I remember. It was a good time. And
Did you have electricity?
No, not at that time. We didn't get electricity till sometime after the 50s. Yeah. We had a dance. We had a farmers union, and that's where my mom sold her cream and her eggs. And above that farmers union was upstairs where they had dances every Saturday night, which were really enjoyed by young people and old people. Actually, sometimes it got a little wild.
Bernice, did you go to the dances?
Of course.
Did you?
But we had a.
Did you witness any of the wildness?
Well, it was pretty easy to witness that we had a lady that always had a huge purse, and she happened to be married to one of the guys that traveled to Missouri every week or so and brought back that purse full of entertainment for the week for when everybody was there. so so anyway, but
Yeah, Bernice, be careful how much you share today. Okay?
Well, I'll be back. Anyway, back to the school. Why I went there for, I don't know, can't remember how many years now, but I did have a wonderful, well, Mrs. Vinson, all of you knew Mrs. Vinson. She was the county superintendent, and that lady visited every kid in the county who attended school outside of right here in the city, as I call it. But she went to all the rural schools, and as well as all of you here, which I know she came to too.
Yeah.
My dad farmed with a team of horses. We had chores, no TV, milk cows for milk, and raise chickens for eggs. No computers or TV. But we all learned to read early.
We're going to talk to Mary Lou Bookman, and she's going to have her able assistant, Eddie Whitney, help her, and Marge Nash. Okay, now they're going to talk a little bit about Hymer, okay?
I was born in the 30s, and Hymer itself, the small town, was pretty much built as big as it ever got. It only had about 6 houses, and it had a church at one time, which was gone when I was born. It had a blacksmith shop, it had a post office, a depot, and a big stockyards, and that was the main reason for Hymer, because of the 101 Ranch and the thousands of cattle that passed through that area while I was growing up. So there's nothing there now. One house was recently torn down, I guess since the 2000s, called the Fink House. That was the most impressive house in Hymer. And it's kind of ironic. He was one of the first settlers that settled in the area when it started.
Who was that?
Fink was his name. Fink.
Okay.
And I guess you don't really need me to tell too much. I remember the school. There was
But you had a grade school?
A 2-room schoolhouse. It was built in about 1903. It was right across the road from my house, and I kept running away going there because I thought it was so much fun with the kids. And until the electric line came through, and then I was afraid to go under the electric line. I thought it would shock me. But anyway, later on, I grew up, went to school in Emporia, teacher school, and taught there one year.
Okay.
And a few years after that, it was consolidated with Elmdale, just like everything else. There's nothing there now. Every house has either been moved out, torn down, or something, and there's nothing there now except a big feedlot with bison in it.
Okay, here's Cottonwood Falls, and so they're talking about the town of Hymer, which is up the Diamond Creek Road. And Mary, you came along later. What year did you?
1953. And I moved in July of 23, so I lived in Hymer 71 years.
Oh, 71 years. Okay. Was you ever the mayor?
No.
No.
There were a lot of people there that should be here today, but I guess I'm the only one left to kind of cover those years. The things that I remember about Hymer that were so special in the early 50s, the cattle were still being brought in. They were Santa Gertrudis, and I had a wonderful place to see them all come in because I was in a little house and I could watch out my kitchen window and I could see the cattle from the Hymer Bridge clear up over the ridge. And I will never forget that.
And at the time, it seemed like the usual thing. But I'm sorry that we didn't have cameras so we could get that. But then I just think that it's been a wonderful place to live. It progressed from feeding with horses and all of that kind of thing, and doing the um, um, harvest with horse-drawn equipment. And that was before my time, but Burton has memories of that. And then we had such a wonderful situation of neighboring and friendships, and the extension, the HDU that brought us together. That was so special because it was grandparents and parents and grandmothers and mothers and newlyweds, which I was a part of the newlywed bunch. And we benefited a lot because we learned a lot from the extension. And then we also gained so much with the different age groups. And we went once a month, and we had something like 9 children that came to the parties too. And we just learned a lot of wisdom from
You know,
women.
Mary, that you told me about this earlier, and that is so important about the history of our rural communities, is that they were community, and that you folks not only lived together, but you learned from each other, and that's how you made a better community.
And we worked together as neighbors. The Rare family and the Bookman family shared machinery, and so we did the siloing and the hay together, and that was fun times because then we took turns between Rares and I to cook. And then the 4-H program, Burton and I decided that it would be nice to have a 4-H club in Hymer, and we worked through that. Spent one winter just to ourselves thinking, could we do it? And we ended up starting the club in our home, and they were there for a couple years, or I don't know how long. And we had a nice group because older ones came from other areas and we had something like about 25 kids. And that was a joy too, to see the kids have opportunity like that. And it was just a community where we just have lifelong friends.
You know, my feelings about Hymer is stockyards and the cattle.
Oh, definitely.
And you mentioned that. And later on, Eddie, you want to make a few comments, Eddie, about Eddie's a cattleman, a rancher, and has been in Hymer all of his life. And later on, Eddie, I want to talk a little bit about the 101 Ranch, but you might just give us kind of a brief description of the cattle business back in those days.
Okay, well, most of what I know is what I heard from some of the old timers. And Marge's great grandpa and my great grandpa came to around Hymer when the 101 opened up. He was the second manager for the 101 up there. And
that's the 101 Ranch.
101,
Okay.
Yeah, Great Western Land and Cattle Company or whatever. And he was the second manager for it. And when I came along, they were still in the 50s. They were still hauling cattle out there in the train, and everything pretty much went through the stockyards there. I remember that. And then the big truck come along about 1960, somewhere like that, and that was the end of that. The trucker would come to your place, and much handier.
Okay. Selma grew up on Diamond Creek, and that's pretty close to Elmdale. I'm gonna show them where Elmdale is. Okay. Where's Elmdale? There's Elmdale. There's Cottonwood Falls and Strong City. Okay. Selma has some good memories about Elmdale, and so Selma, tell us Tell us your early recollections and give us a description of what Elmdale was like. First off, wait, I don't want to ask how old you are.
I was born in 1942.
You were what? Okay, 1942. So you remember Elmdale during the late 40s and 50s. Okay, tell us what you remember.
Well, Elmdale was a thriving town at that time. Now, not so much. It had, well, I've got it written down here. It had lots of businesses. It had gas stations and 2 grocery stores and what else? A bar, of course, a grain elevator, beauty shop. And before my time, it said a livery stable. And there was a doctor in town, a telephone office. There was quite a few businesses in town.
It had 2 grocery stores?
Yeah. Nairmore's and Bumgardner's.
Okay, what, did it ever have a hotel?
Yes, but not in my time. And a lot of people can't decide for sure where it was. I've heard there was one. Mrs. Brees had a drugstore. It's where the post office is now. And some say there was a hotel there, but I don't. Not my time.
Okay.
Go
ahead. Anything else?
Rode the school bus. My sisters graduated from Rockland School, which was out by where I live now.
Oh, man, Rock Creek School.
No, Rockland.
Rockland. Oh, yeah, Rockland. Yeah.
It's just around the corner from where I live now.
Okay. It had a school there.
Yes, my sisters went there. I did.
And Elmdale had grade school and a high school. Okay. Did you graduate from Elmdale High?
Yes.
Okay.
In 1960. At the grade school, they had 2 classes in every room. So there was 4 big rooms, and there was first, second grade, and so on. There were a lot of floods. There was one 1904, they say, 23, the 40s, and then the 51 flood. Our place did not flood, but all of Elmdale did. The Beckemeyers lived around the corner from us, across from Rockland School, and their home flooded, and they came over and stayed with my family for a while. And then when there was a flood, after 51 flood, they built a levee around the town. And then in, I think it was 98, the flood water came in and went over the levee.
Yeah, the river.
Elmdale really went downtown.
Yeah.
Down.
The river showed what they thought of the levee. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Selma, thank you. That was very good. Thank you, Selma. Okay, Eula, you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you was born and a little bit about Bazaar, okay?
Well, I was born at Matfield Green, about 5 miles, I guess, north of Matfield, on the Victor Kirk farm. And I was brought into this world by Mrs. Kirk, named Opal. She saved my life. I don't remember a great deal about Bazaar. I lived there when I was little. I suppose we moved away when I was 4 or 5 years old. But when I lived there, we had a grocery store and a post office. The post office was in the grocery store. We had a telephone office. We had a hardware store. And Maud Trickle had a cafe. And that was just about all we needed.
Yeah, Bazaar, that's pretty good. Bazaar had...
It was a thriving community.
Okay, yeah.
And then there was the stockyards.
Stockyards were big in Bazaar, weren't they?
Stockyards were big. If you mentioned Bazaar, people knew about the stockyards.
Yeah.
They also had a church and a school.
Did they have a high school or just a grade school? Okay, just grade school. And they had a church in town there?
Yes, they had a church.
Okay. All right. That's very, very good.
I suppose there were 30 or 40 people lived there. The Gaddys and the Nortons and the Beatles and Elmore Stout lived near Bazaar.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's about all I remember. If you want to, I didn't go to the courthouse and look up any statistics, so
Yeah, you told us what we wanted to hear, Eula. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to my favorite Matfield Greenian. That's Clara Jo Talkington. I didn't realize I had another Matfield Greenian over here, so between you and Clara Jo, okay, we better go on. Okay, Clara Jo, tell us what you remember about Matfield, and what time period did you live in Matfield?
Well, I was born north of Matfield on the old Baker place, but the most I remember is we lived south of Matfield on what we called the Bray place, and I took my first year of school at the city service school. And
They had a school?
there was
the
a
city service.
school at the city service. The foundation is still there. There was a fellow that bought the school after it closed and built a house out of it. But the foundation is still there. But Matfield can't be called a ghost town. It is building. It has had to rebuild twice. There was a full, large block that burnt in the 30s. And
All the businesses
all the
in
businesses.
the 30s, okay.
And there was at one time 3 filling stations, 2 grocery stores, a lumber yard, a millinery store, buggy repair shop, 2 lumber yards, and stockyards. And there was a hotel, but it burnt in 47. They had a grade school and a high school.
And a high school, okay.
At one time, there were 4 other schools, and they all consolidated and came into Matfield Green. And we used to have community meetings once a month and put on one-act plays, and they played baseball, had a town team baseball team, a high school baseball team. We had a big gym, what was still there, that is now being turned into a recording studio.
Yeah.
Our grade school, there was a fellow that bought that grade school and raised goats in it. Well, there is a group now that have bought the grade school, and they have washed walls and cleaned floors and washed windows, and it is a community meeting place now.
Okay, Matfield Green Community Center had goats
Yes.
only in Chase County.
I'd like to tell you why we moved to Saffordville. My husband was hired on Emporia State, and he left me in Texas, Lubbock, and we had 4 kids. So he had to find a house. There were 3 houses for rent in Emporia. Now, can you believe that? Anyway, he thought, well, I'll go out and look in the country. And he got a notice of a house out this way in 50, West 50. And so he took the wrong turn, and he turned down Saffordville. So he realized it, and then he saw a man in the yard, and he stopped and asked, and it was Francis Imeshi. And he said, I missed the place. I want to know where, whatever house it was. And he says, I want to buy it. And he says, I'll sell you this one. And so we bought Saffordville. At first, it was a block and a half, and it was just across the school. And we had 4 kids, 18, 13, 12, 10, and 2 months. A lot of you probably know the 2 months were. She is TJ Hayes. We called her Tammy. And it was Tammy Bridge, and she was 2 months old. So we moved in. The 51 flood had done its damage. The water came over to the mantle. And so the windows needed to be washed. And it was fairly clean. He had come back. In fact, he had come back to see what was left of it. He lived in Washington, D.C. by this time. Okay, so then we really hadn't been told about the floods, but we sure found out. And so it flooded. Okay, I learned that if you put the furniture up on tin cans, you can avoid it so much. So we would watch in the basement when the flood came up, and if it got full, why, we knew we needed to put the tin cans up. Okay, well, I'll skip all the floods which we had. And Tom bought a backhoe. And so I said he played in the dirt. Actually, he put a berm around the house, and it worked pretty good for the minor floods. The major floods, it came over. So we put another foot up on it. And our son-in-law, ex-son-in-law then, he said, don't build it any higher. He lived in the house just across the railroad tracks, the big white house that's burned now. And so he didn't put it up anymore, but it sure came up for 3.5 feet in the house in the 98 flood. In one of them, we looked out the window, and I'll go back. Stanley North used to bring Mr. Ameshi's father, who lived in the house. There's a little room upstairs, one room upstairs, and he would come and dock at the back porch roof, and he would bring up the mail and milk if he wanted milk, and they'd take the screen off the thing. And so, well, Stanley asked him if he wanted to put the screen back on, and he said, sure. No, don't. Flies will come in, and I'll swat them. It gives me something to do.
Floods have been a big part of Saffordville's
yes.
history.
We had
Yeah,
lots of them.
yeah.
98 flood was the worst that we've had when we were there. But it sure is a mess to clean up. One time when it was flooding, the garage was made for Model Ts. It was a 3-car garage. Well, you would think that that would be enough garage for cars, but our car wouldn't fit in it. So we never did use it as a garage for cars, but lots of stuff would go in there. And then it'd have to be cleaned out. Well, there was an old grand piano bench that someone had brought in there at some time. And we saw it floating down the field. When the water went down, Tom went down with the backhoe. He brought it back up, put it in the garage, and so far as I know, it may still be there.
Any of you ever heard of the town of Elk? Okay, we got a young lady here. There's Elk, or what was Elk. That's the Middle Creek Road, and Mary Ann Cole's going to tell us some of the history that she knows about Elk.
First of all, I was born in Strong City, Kansas, at the maternity home, which a lot of people in here probably were also. I've been very privileged to have lived in Chase County all my life. I lived in Strong City for 16 years. I attended Strong City schools and Cottonwood. And then I married a Chase County man who lived in Elk. That town was built in 1865 and it completely burned down in 1930. So all I can do is tell you what I have tried to find out about Elk. At the end of my lane, there was a town there. There were no more than 3 buildings that I have been able to research at the time, but one of them was a large building. It also had the post office in it. It had a general store. Then one was added on as a creamery. There was also a blacksmith shop. But the thing that is going through my mind that I listen to everyone else is the fact that I think we all lacked water to put out fires because every single building in that town burned and there was no Elk any longer. The only thing there that is left right now is a small bridge, and it spanned across Middle Creek, but now the creek has been rerouted, so now it's dry. That's it. There's nothing else left of Elk other than I know at the end of my lane, there used to be a town there. There was never a school in the town of Elk. The school that my husband went to, which was Elk School, was 2 miles, 2 miles east of the town. And he went from whenever he started school, I'm not sure they had kindergarten back then, but they might have, through 8th grade. And then he was able to get a bus that came to Cottonwood Falls. And that school was torn down without telling anyone in the community they were going to tear it down. So we're still angry about that.
Yeah, you don't hold a grudge, do you?
No, just
Okay.
a little one.
All right.
There's a stone, kind of a concave stone that
Yeah.
where it was right out there. So that's still there, but they destroyed it. And at that time, it seems to me it also destroyed being neighbors, because we would go into that schoolhouse and we would get together every weekend and you knew your neighbors. You had telephone lines that 2 rings, 1 ring was yours, and then the other ladies were listening in on everybody's conversations. And everybody knew when somebody passed away, and everybody knew when babies were born, and now nobody knows anything. And there's hardly anyone left there, but I have been there now for 60 years. So if you can find me, FedEx still can't find me. You're welcome to come anytime.
Okay, Mary Ann, thank you. You know, kind of what we've heard a lot of is in those days, community and neighboring was really important. And we've lost some of that. But, that doesn't mean it can't come back, Okay, now we're going to go to Wonsevu. And we have, actually we got 2 residents of Marion. Dale and Tootsie are here, Snelling. And Dale?
My connection with Wonsevu is my aunt and uncle, Anna and Marshall Baker, own a couple of farms out there. Both of them were born and raised within 3 miles of Wonsevu. My aunt, her father and mother, was Henry Seidner, and Emma Silver was my grandma, and they both growed up in the Wonsevu area. Fact of the matter, my aunt lived in sod houses around the Salina area and moved there as a young girl. And then my grandpa was born there. His dad had came to Kansas. I want to start something first here. I'm ahead of my story. Okay, Kansas was established in 1854, basically. And it became the 34th state in 1861. The county platted out in 1859, Chase County. And Wonsevu was filed in 1884. And anyhow, my great-grandfather, he's a Nicholas E. Seidner, came from Fayette County, Illinois, and settled in Butler County near Peabody. Shortly after, moved to Florence. Shortly after, moved to Wonsevu, Chase County, Kansas, and commenced to have 12 kids there. And my grandpa was one of them, Charlie Seidner. And my grandpa and grandma started in many houses out there. They had, like I say, a honeymoon house where they was in. They went to another house, and they went to another house and another house. And I don't know whether he was a gypsy, couldn't pay the rent, or just run out of room for all the kids they were having. I don't know. But anyway, they wound up on the farm, and there's been several. My grandpa built a log cabin there, great-grandpa, and then his family eventually built a 1.5-story house, modern-type house there. And, of course, barns and sheds and all kinds of stuff were built there. And there's been numerous people live there. Doris and Ed Griffin, Rick's mom and dad, they lived there. They were one, and Donnie Rogers was the last one that lived there. Wonsevu was derived from a Sioux Indian name, which means running deer. Wonsevu was like all the other towns. It had a grocery store. It started out in a house, and a couple of people ran it. It got into another house, had a grocery store, and a mail office, and eventually they built a schoolhouse, and then they built a church and a ladies' aid, and there was 12 houses in Wonsevu at one time. In 1910, there was the census showed 57 residents that lived in Wonsevu at one time. And the one grocery store had a filling station, and that's about all. At a blacksmith shop, there was a blacksmith shop. Mr. Shanklin had a blacksmith.
The next one is not a ghost town. Strong City. We're going to have Bill Stubenofer. Like I said, Stubenofer's been a big part of Strong City forever. So, Bill, kind of tell us, you spent your whole life in Strong City.
Yeah, all but 3 months. Right after I married her, lived in Cottonwood in an apartment. Moved back to Strong City.
You lived in Cottonwood for 3 months and moved to Strong City? What the hell does that tell you about Cottonwood Falls?
It's about the family.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was starting to pick on me. No, like I said, I've been there all the time. In fact, my great aunts run the maternity home. If you were born in Chase County and
Marianne was born. Oh, look, how many of you was born in the Stubenofer home? Oh, my goodness. Wasn't for your aunt, we wouldn't be here today.
I meant to bring it, but I have the book that she kept and wrote down your mother's name, the day you were born, how many days she stayed, and the doctor. but I
You
didn't.
got that book?
Yes, I got that book.
Okay.
I'm getting to be the last of it. And I was born in the South End of Strong City, way early in the 40s. And after the flood, my aunts sold the house in the bottom, moved up on the hill where they're at.
Now that's 51,
Yeah,
51 flood. That's hard on Strong City.
Ruined it. And the house that I was born in, they moved up on the hill to the new addition up in Strong. And when I build a new house, I build an empty lot right next to it. So in almost 80 years, I've got 50 feet from the house I was born in. Haven't traveled much, but I have. But Strong had a lot of businesses. I can remember at one time there was 3 filling stations: Derby, Standard, Skelly. 2 implement places: Alice Chalmers. Well, 3, and John Deere and International, the Bank Hotel, men's clothing store, leather shop, the printing shop that the postmaster's wife run, hardware, 2 taverns, 3 restaurants, 6 churches, and now we're down to 2 churches.
You had 6 churches?
Yes.
In Strong City. Okay.
I didn't go to all of them, no.
How about 2 taverns?
Once. But after the 51 flood, everything in the South End more or less moved up to the new addition, which is on by the grade school and high school now. And
Okay, now you guys following that? That South End had a lot of houses in it, right?
Yes.
And after the flood, Mary Ann was down there. They moved them up there by where the grade school's at, and that was big.
Rodeo grounds. The north side was up there in the north end of the highway now. The businesses left after the flood, and then the traffic, when the highway moved, that's when it pretty well eliminated it. Like I said, right now you got, Fink's hardware store and a restaurant that's open part-time, and the post office. The bank's even closed now, so... Yeah, the Bank Hotel burnt. I remember that.
LDI is in there now, livestock district.
Yeah, as in that's where the bank is, where the LDI is now. That was the men's clothing store.
Oh, okay.
Years ago, but beauty shop, on the south side, but 3 grocery stores.
3 grocery stores. Okay, the courthouse is big. It's when anywhere you go and you say Chase County, they say courthouse, okay, or Flint Hills. Anywhere you go, you say Strong City, they say Flint Hills Rodeo. Rodeo's been a big part of Strong City, Bill.
Yeah, Emmett Roberts started a rodeo, and I think they said in 1937. It was held out there at their place west of Strong, where Pat and Mark Potts live now, in that area. And then I think they said in 40-something, they moved it up to where the overpass is on Highway 50 and 177. And then when the highway changed, they moved it to the original place now, which is the grounds where it's been there. So it's been there all of those years. But the Robertsons started it at their place west of Strong in 1937.
Okay. That's very informative, Bill. We're going to talk about Cottonwood Falls. June Morgan. June, you've spent all of your life.
Years old, and I've been here all but 4 years.
Okay, June, tell us about what the earliest things you remember about Cottonwood Falls. You remember things from the 50s, would you?
Late 50s and 60s. I was gone for part of the 70s, and it changed a lot at that time. I do want to tell you, you're now sitting in Beanie's drugstore. It was a Wilcox drugstore. He wasn't a pharmacist. A Beanie's, yes. But that's what us younger kids, we couldn't come down here over the noon hour because the high school kids came down here and they drank coffee and they smoked. But back
Wait. They
Yes.
drank coffee.
Well, and soda pop or whatever.
The high schoolers,
Yep, the high schools
and
did
they
that.
smoked.
They smoked.
Who'd ever thought?
And we also, when we were kids, this is where we came to buy our school books. At least some of us came here. You had to buy your books back in those days. I don't know what they do now. And there's one other one I'd like to talk about is the armory up here. I don't know whether you know it, but it was built, I don't know quite for sure, sometime in the 36, I think, somewhere in there. It was a WPA project, and it was a National Guard armory, and it was the 137th Infantry. And I forgot to bring it, but I have a picture of all the guys right after Pearl Harbor when they were shipping out of it. And there's a lot of local guys. And also in that, before it is now whatever it is, it used to be the skating rink. Starkey's had a skating rink in there, and we really had fun in there. And
How
that's
many of you went skating there? Hey, looky there.
I think somebody else later tried it again, but it didn't work, I don't think. And that's where, I don't know how many of you remember the the rhythm merchants. Any of you remember it? Okay. Saturday night, the town would stay open late. All the stores in town would stay open late, and it was called the Rhythm Merchants because the merchants were the band members. I remember I think Johnny Bassell might have played a saxophone. I'm not sure. And Jim Bell Jr. was the singer for the most part. I don't know whether he played trumpet. I thought it was a trumpet. And that was the heyday. And there was drinking allowed at the band. But no. I don't ever remember us having any. We used to have a fight. Back when I came into grade school, I was the first consolidated class that everybody went to over here except Strong City. And so there was a fight before we did that. And they wanted to put the new school in between the two towns, believe that or not. But anyway, it didn't pass. But we fought and fought all our lives. In fact, for a while, we didn't talk to one another.
Is the feud between Cottonwood and Strong still strong? Is it big yet?
No.
No? What do you think, Bill?
No.
No, it isn't anything like it used to be?
No.
Yeah.
It started because Cottonwood was promised the railroad station. They got the railroad station, but we got the courthouse, and that's where it started, way back yonder. This town mostly burnt down, Main Street. There was a lot of buildings burned down here. At one time, there were 3 grocery stores in town. Now, this is when I was a child. I can't go back any further than the 50s. We had 3 doctors in town. We had 1 lovely dentist. We had 2 clothing stores in town, men's and women's. We had a variety store, a jewelry store, and the big clock up at the courthouse, okay? That was in the Bradley jewelry store, which was, it's got the copper letters on the front of the building down here. And that big clock was the regulator clock, which the railroad used to set all their clocks, their watches and everything. And it was donated to the county, and that's the big regulator clock up there at the courthouse if you want to go see it. There was a bank here, and it went through, not the Exchange National Bank, but the other bank here on the corner, and it went through a hard time, and it went into receivership, and one of the owners and investors in it committed suicide because of the collapse of the bank.
You're a regular history book of Cottonwood Falls. So let's thank June for everything. So yeah. Okay. All right, now that's tough, Bill. Is Strong City going to be a ghost town?
It's not too far from it right now. I think there was 8 cars on the street today when I come through, which is about 9 more than there usually is. No, the 51 flood and the highway moving and everything, and the feedlots left. We lost a lot of people. There's no income. People can work. So
Yep. In
That may not be wrong.
Chase County in the Flint Hills, floods determine the destiny of a lot of towns.
Yep. Yep.
Unfortunately. June, Marianne, you
Yeah,
got a story
okay.
about the 51 flood in
I have a
Strong
great
City.
story. It's a true story. Okay, I'll try to do this quickly. Oh, the Great Flood of 1951. The local sheriff knocked on our door in Strong City, Kansas at 8 p.m. and told my dad that the Cottonwood River was going to go out and that we should drive our only car uptown so it would not get flooded. So Dad did, but not only did the river go out, it flooded the entire town. We awoke to step in floodwater in our home and our house set up on 3 feet of stone blocks. We were trapped. The water was rapidly rising. And as my younger sister and me floated on a mattress inside the house, watching out the window, the neighbor's home was washed off its foundation, floated across the street, and exploded in a million pieces. Dad said, "That's it. We're next." Dad was a carpenter, and we had a tree right next to the southeast corner of our home. So he nailed pieces of wood up the tree, took a wooden ironing board up first, and nailed it to a fork in the tree for my mom and sister to sit on, then carried me up there and set me on his lap. Dad had called for a helicopter to come rescue us, but with the last name of Brown and 7 brothers living in the same town, we were overlooked. We spent 2 days and 2 nights in the tree. The water was 9 foot deep. No one came to get us, and when the water started to recede, we went back into the house and once again floated on a mattress. In later years, my mom asked me if I remembered getting a spanking after we came down out of the tree. I didn't, and she told me a rescue boat finally came up to the window, but I refused to get in because I hadn't combed my hair. I was 4 years old. I have black and white pictures of the tree, the ironing board, and of me afterwards playing in the floodwater. I thought of the entire thing as a great adventure, as I don't ever remember being frightened.
All right, that's a good story. Thank you, Marianne. All right, June, you're a Cottonwood Falls girl. Cottonwood Falls destined to become a ghost town.
I'm afraid it might,
It might.
because there aren't any job opportunities, much to speak of. And the people that do here live here now, most all of them, well, maybe not most, but quite a few of them work in Emporia. And they live here simply because it's cheaper to live here. They do their shopping in Emporia. If it wasn't for Clark's, Fink's over in Strong City, Dollar General, a few mechanics, and Casey's, we wouldn't have much in town. It's mostly antique stores. There's just not much here because we've lost the businesses. And without businesses, and the young people can't stay because there's no jobs.
Yep.
So they move on.
The biggest need in rural Kansas towns is jobs and housing.
Yeah.
And both those are difficult to get here. And we got a courthouse. We're a county seat, Cottonwood
while.
Falls. And we got a thriving school district. But June says, and I don't know about the rest of you, we could become a ghost town, huh?
You disagree?
Barb says,
We live here because we want to live here.
yep.